Coby White and Josh Giddey were both listed in HoopsHype's top 30 point guards heading into next season. But are they going to stay there considering they're going to be sharing a backcourt together? Me and Pat are going to talk about all that plus more on today's Locked On Bulls.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily Chicago Bulls podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. That is Pat the Designer, host and creator of the Windy City Breeze and host of the Chicago Bears podcast over at ESPN 1000. I'm Haize, host and creator of Chicago Bulls Central and Chicago Bears Central YouTube pages and podcasts. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Pat, Josh Giddey, Coby White, both listed as in the top 30 point guard list at number 21 and 22, respectively. Coby White actually came in that list ranked above Josh Giddey. When you hear that they both were listed towards the in the top 30, how do you feel about that? Do you think they are top 30 point guards in this league?
Well, first off, let's just start off and congratulate the fact that Josh Giddey made it above 17. I just feel like
wow.
I just feel like wait, I guess
Wow.
in this case, wouldn't that be below? Maybe it's worse. Maybe it's worse because he's below 17. Dang it.
That's crazy.
But no, I'll listen. I think that it shows kind of where you have two young point guards. It shows the fact that the Chicago Bulls are in a situation with pieces who are tops in their position. And yeah, it is in the 20s right now, but both pieces that at least in Coby White you feel is ascending, and in Josh Giddey you feel can get back to where he was, where, I mean, listen, at a certain point, you probably say he was a top 15 PG in this NBA when he was actually getting to do some point guard work. So yeah. I think that it's a sign that the Bulls have some young pieces that feel like they're moving in the right direction. It really comes down to the coaching. It really comes down to the utilization. It really comes down to how are the Chicago Bulls going to use these two to their advantage, and how do you still use the strength? Because I think that's the one part where in our minds we're just like, Coby White's a 2 guard now, and Josh Giddey's a point guard, and that's the world that we live in now. Where realistically speaking, you could work some time with Io and Giddey, not Giddey, I'm sorry, Io and Coby with the bench unit, and you can still utilize Coby as one of those top 25 point guards.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. It's up to Billy Donovan to find that balance as far as ball handling. Now, I mean, the benefit is that people have all of a sudden tried to make it seem like Coby White was all of a sudden this half-court point guard who just ran, and he didn't. Like, he still shared the court with DeMar DeRozan. The difference is now you're giving those possessions to DeMar DeRozan. I mean, to Josh Giddey, who's actually at the point guard position, and he's a better playmaker than what DeMar DeRozan was. A really good passer. Josh Giddey's a playmaker. Those are very different things, and so I think it could still work out. It's gonna take a balancing act from head coach Billy Donovan and the coaching staff to make it kind of work seamless, and it's up to the players to put in the effort to figure out how to complement each other's game as well. And that's what training camp, that's what preseason's for, and we'll see it. The last time people questioned a fit, it was DeMar DeRozan if he fit on this team, and he ended up breaking a couple of wood records. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think that's really finding out the utilization, finding out the rotations. Those are going to be two of the most important things that the Chicago Bulls can do over their future couple of years, right? Because like there's so many young pieces that we have to figure out, okay, how do these guys fit? How are they actually going to work together? There's so many questions that this team has right now. And I think the biggest thing is just figuring out, okay, which guys are going to be here? Who's going to be your role players? Who's going to be your focal points? And, some of the topics that we have here, right? Who are you moving on from? And who are you trying to build something serious around? Because it seems like you may have a player who can take that next step in Coby White, which means Josh Giddey would be perfect for that. But do you feel the same way about this team if Coby White is also just a role player? Do you feel the same way about this team if you got 3 point guard role players on this team, right? Like, I think that's what's going to be so telling about this season, what's going to be so interesting about this season is you're really going to have to dive deep into the rotation of this team and figure out, okay, what are the future pieces that actually feel like star level pieces Or do we really have a Denver Nuggets type of team that's just
even if it's not
Yeah, I
star
mean-
level, like who on the and I do believe I talked about that a little bit today on Central, is that I think that we could be in store for another busy offseason next offseason, regardless of what happens with our draft pick, because I do think this season is going to be a whole season of evaluating, okay, this is a guy that we can see excelling to this point. This is a guy we see excelling to this point. We can get another guy for on a more cost-effective contract that's on a rookie scale deal longer for this. Like, I think that's going to be a lot of what they look at this season. And that is what you should do. When you have a younger roster, you want to see who's going to project where. Some of that you're not going to all be able to tell in one season. I'm not saying they're going to be able to have a clear-cut answer on every single player, but I would not be surprised if some of the names that are here younger end up having a different destination by this time next year as well.
And I think that's really what I was getting at, right? Like you're going to go through. I mean, you traded for Josh Giddey. Yes, we feel like you're all in on Josh Giddey being the point guard of the future. But like, what if we're not?
Yeah.
Then you feel really bad about the Caruso trade. But honestly, like I think that's the part that people have to prepare themselves for this season. That you've got two young players that feel like, yeah, you're moving in the right direction. But what if it's not what we expect? What if it's
Let me
not?
ask you this.
Go ahead.
If you have, let's say Josh Giddey and Coby White both have solid seasons. I'm not saying terrible, but you could tell, all right, this thing probably isn't going to work between the two of them. Which one would you bet on at that point in time? Let's say Josh Giddey gets back close to what he was in 2022-23, the almost 18 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists guy. Coby White has another solid season of scoring 20 points per game, but you could tell, hey, the fit here isn't quite as what we hoped it would be. Which direction would you go? As from the information, it's a bunch of ifs right now, but for the information you have right now,
I'll tell you this. You know what's tough? I would go with Josh Giddey because I think it's harder to find another Josh Giddey than it is to find a Coby White.
Okay.
I think that it is harder to find somebody who can go out there and facilitate, run your offense. And that's what we're talking about, him getting back to being that level of player.
Getting back to
facilitate, run your offense, be able to set guys up to where the baskets are easy. It's harder to find that guy than it is to find a dude that can go out there and put up 25 points a night in the modern NBA, which is wild to say for the modern league. But I think you can find a Coby White again. Like, those guys are in the league. Heck, you may have a couple of them on your team if they get to that next level. Remember, like Larry Markkinen was a dude that was an 18 point per game guy and was ascending. Zach LaVine has been a 20+ point per game guy. Coby White feels like he's becoming a 20 to 25 point per game guy, right? Like, those guys exist. How many dudes are getting above 8 assists a game in the league? Right?
And just to highlight because I know there are going to be some Bulls fans that hear that and, of course, kind of react to it. But just to highlight what Pat says, last year in the NBA, Pat, do you want to guess how many players scored over 20 points per game?
Ooh, how many players scored over 20 points? Give me
average over 20 points per game.
Give me 60. Give me 60 players.
Not quite. 40. 40 players.
I'm not that far off. I'm not that far off.
Over 40 players average, and over 50 players average 19 points per game. So one more shot, you're right there. So yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying as far as like if you just need a scorer, it's easier to find a scorer than somebody who that can truly distribute and has the playmaking that it seems like. I don't know if I agree that and again, it's my own attachment. Like, Kobe's been here and developed through here, and so it'd be difficult for me to move on from Kobe because of those things. But I mean, that is a realistic place that we have to be. Now, to double down, to back up on my question as well, Pat, would you want the Bulls to make that decision next season, or would you let's say at the end of next season, or would you want them to say, all right, we're going to give it another season after this to see if they can work out the kinks further?
Well,
keep in mind, by that point, Kobe's expiring the contract.
Yeah, I think here's the thing also, right? It doesn't mean that Coby White fell off. It doesn't mean that Coby White is the bottom of the barrel in the NBA. I think the thing is, are you okay with having Josh Giddey and maybe Coby White's just a role player and you got to go out and find your star? I'm fine with that being the scenario. I'm fine with you, right? If Coby White is what he was last year, which was 18 points a game,
19.1,
19 points a game. Yeah, I mean 7 assists. Like if he's that guy, fine, cool. We're in a good spot with a solid role player. It just means you have to go out and find your star, which I think the Bulls already know. So, yeah, I'm fine continuing with that. I just wouldn't set my expectations where I think a lot of Bulls fans would, where if you got Josh Giddey averaging 17, you got Coby White averaging 19, right? Mugs are instantly going to say, we get a couple more role players on this team, we could be or we can be the 06 Pistons where everybody's getting, and it's not the case. You need a star. You have to have a star.
Yeah, I mean, granted, you get one team every 10 to 15 years that seems to win the title based off a lot of just role players, but it is what it is. Like, yeah, you need a star. You need to find one. I mean, that's not to say you need to jettison off anybody who does not become that star, but eventually you need to find that star player to help you. If you truly want to get to sustain championship contention, you kind of need that star.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we've done that, right? You had Kirk, you had Luol, you had Ben Gordon, and then all of a sudden Derrick Rose showed up, and it was like, these dudes are a lot more valuable now.
Yeah, that's a fact.
So
that's a fact.
Hey, that's it's okay to build your team that way, and that's really what it comes down to. You don't have to fire anybody off into the sun.
That's a fact. All right, so next up, we're going to be discussing Zach LaVine back on the court trying to make his comeback. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But before we get into that, we got to talk to you about a message from our sponsor, and that is eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. The eBay Guarantee Fit only available to U.S. customers.
Zion Williamson and porn stars.
I don't know.
Don't give some people, you just don't need to give soundboards to. It's a great responsibility. And
it's like when Joel was in the background and he was just pressing buttons.
Bro, that was hilarious, right, bro. He was just pressing stuff. All right, Pat. So we got a video with Zach LaVine working out, getting ready for his return. How do you feel about it, brother?
I mean, listen, these workout videos never impress me. They're never like, oh my God, look, he's a basketball player again, because usually they're playing against like D1 prospects and stuff like that. Dudes that you know that they're gonna cook. But it was good to see Zach back on the court. It was good to see him moving what felt like effortlessly. I can't take a ton from a rec league video. But I mean, like it does seem like he's healthy. I think I saw him do a dunk in that video as well. So it seems like he's back, easily rising up above the rim. Those are things to be excited about if you're a Bulls fan moving forward. I mean, it's a small video. It's nothing crazy. It's not like you're sitting here making grand statements about it, but you feel like Zach LaVine is healthy. That's a good thing for Bulls fans right now. And having videos out there like that is a good thing for Bulls fans right now, because of what we'll talk about in this third topic. Like, if you're going to move Zach LaVine, people need to, at a minimum, know that he's healthy right now.
Yeah. And I think that's 100% fact, is that you want Zach LaVine, no matter what happens, you want Zach LaVine healthy. Whether you're ultimately moving Zach, whether he stays or whatever, you want Zach LaVine healthy and on that basketball court. Nothing gets better for you, for a team, as an asset, if Zach LaVine is not healthy on that basketball court. So, and Zach knows that, right? I think I would not be surprised if Zach comes back into this trying to prove something. Now, I'm not going to say that necessarily is going to equate to good basketball. We'll see. It hopefully does, but Zach LaVine is going to be out to prove, because his name's been dragged through the mud all summer.
Yeah. No, that's really what it comes down to. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to be on a mission early in the season. It's going to be fun to see. It's going to be fun to see how he's going to come out and try and attack. But I think that it comes down to a couple of things with Zach LaVine. We talked about it in the first segment with Kobe and Josh. How are they going to utilize him? Is there going to be a force feeding of Zach LaVine in the basketball, or are you going to see him work as a team? What's the best way to try and move Zach LaVine? Are you trying to move Zach LaVine as the 20-plus point per game scorer? Are you trying to move him as the team player that can fit in? And if you're trying to move him as the team player that can fit in, do you kind of re-fall in love with him? Because we've said it on this show. We both talked about it. Like when Zach LaVine basically says, I'm going to be the guy that plays off of everybody, he's a phenomenal basketball player.
Yeah.
Like that's what's going to be tough to see.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, we know Zach LaVine from 2019 to the end of the 2022-23 season, there were only 9 players in the NBA to score more points than Zach LaVine. He's elite at what he does. And I hate that it's gotten to a point because of the contract injuries that people now talk about Zach like he's some trash player. He's not. He has an elite skill. That elite skill is scoring the basketball. You know what teams need in the modern NBA? Scoring. Now, that brings some headaches as far as defensively, especially off ball. He falls asleep sometimes. He's grown as an on-ball defender, but still sometimes can struggle there for sure. He's before last season, he played in 85% of the games available since he came to the Chicago Bulls. Again, he's played dinged up in some of those games, but he's not the only one, right? So, like, there's this conversation in our narrative around Zach because there's criticism over why teams have not traded for him, and the conversation has gone too far to the area where people try to make it seem like Zach's trash. He's not a trash basketball player, brother.
Did you see the Kendrick Perkins comments, which is why whenever you bring Kendrick Perkins up on this podcast, but did you see the Kendrick Perkins comments where he basically was like, how is it that the Bulls come away from this with no culpability?
And they shouldn't. And they should. There's blame on every side that should be.
Yeah. And that was kind of like,
is that a Cub shirt?
What?
You got on a Cub shirt?
What's wrong with you? Why would I have a Cub shirt on?
Is that not blue and red? Thank God. Oh my God. Okay.
1980s White Sox.
Bro, I would have literally felt so betrayed if I saw you with Cubs merch on.
1980s White Sox.
I would have had it in the show right there. That's what
the greatest uniforms ever.
Yes. I saw the blue and red. I got a little concerned, my boy. My bad. I apologize.
I'm disappointed in you.
Listen, I would have been disappointed in you.
Disappointed in you.
I'm sorry.
Is that a Cubs shirt? Like, I wish I could have seen the disgust in my own face. Like, what?
If you guys can't tell, we're both Sox fans. I felt very betrayed there by my brother.
Never put that evil on me, Ricky Bobby. But no, dog. Like, it's so funny with the Zach LaVine situation, how the Bulls just seem to always come out of it with no culpability. The conversation around it is when Zach LaVine has been nothing but a professional. He's been nothing but a good teammate. He's never trashed the Bulls. He's never besmirched the Bulls. He's never talked bad about the Bulls. And yet it is all Zach LaVine isn't good enough to play in this league. And that's one thing that, like, we've never said that on this show. We've never talked about how Zach LaVine is not good enough. We talked about why teams may not want him, but we've literally said, but if he comes in as the 3, like, that's not a bad option to have, even with his contract.
Yeah. Especially with the way the contracts are given out now. Like, I'm sorry, role players are making almost what Zach LaVine's making. Y'all got to stop complaining.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts.
Bro, like, so every year that goes by, the contract looks more and more reasonable because you're just like, some of the deals that were given out, bro, it's just like, hey, I'm glad everybody's getting their money. Make no mistake about it. Get your checks, young fellas. But man, if you had a guess, I know we're both also Bears fans. Khalil Herbert or Zach LaVine, who's moved out of Chicago first?
Khalil Herbert.
Khalil Herbert? Yeah, I would agree with that.
I mean, listen, Khalil Herbert has more value right now. and only makes $1 million.
That's an absolute fact. That's crazy. That's a big difference.
Khalil Herbert's is a solid running back. You know what I mean? Kind of redundant on this team. It's a little tough, but you know what I'm saying? Like, when you only make $1 million versus 40 of them, yeah, that's a big difference there. Hey, man, before we get to this final topic, we got to talk about Zach and Vooch, and the Bulls still trying to trade them. We've kind of like just shied away from this and just accepted our fate, but the Bulls have not stopped trying to trade them. Got to talk about that coming up next. But first, a message from our sponsors. Got to tell you guys all about Gametime. Now, full disclosure, I actually got an opportunity to use Gametime this week when I was going to the Hall of Fame game. You can get the media tickets and all of that, but I like to sit among the people. I like to sit among my fans. Plus, I'd never sat in that stadium, so I wanted to take the opportunity to do it. So I went on Gametime to see if I could get some last minute ticket deals. Guess what? I could. $100 seats, which is wild for a preseason game, but $100 seats I was able to get for $34. I paid another $20 for parking. That's $54 to get into the game down in Canton, and man, was it worth it. Last minute deals. I was able to save at least up to 60% off buying last minute sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Flash deals with exclusive deals in app and select seats. Head over to game right before you're heading over to the game or event. And guess what? The all-in pricing was nice. At first I was like, oh, the all-in pricing seems a little bit of cap here, but then I had to toggle it on, and once it was on, all the pricing right up front, I got to see everything I needed to see. And Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference if it is not the lowest price out there right now. So what are you doing? Go over, download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for a $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create the code and redeem the code, or download the app. I just had a stroke. Download the app, create an account, and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
See, that's what you get for all that stroke talk there, my boy.
Hey,
now look at you. Now look at you.
What are we talking about?
What happened? Well, now, brother. So apparently the Bulls are still trying. We've heard. Listen, the thing is, at this point, Pat, this may be the last. I know we're in the dog days of the offseason. I'm tired of talking about the Bulls shopping Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic. Like, we hear 1 week, oh, they're not shopping. They're resigned to them being here. A week goes by of nothing, then next it's back to they're being moved. Listen, we know that the Bulls would like to move Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic. I have my personal doubts that they're shopping Vooch as hard, because I don't think it would be difficult to move Vooch as it is Zach LaVine, but maybe they do want the Zach LaVine piece to be moved first. I would not be surprised if Torrey Craig is included in either one of the deals, if either one of those guys are moved first. When you hear that the Bulls still are exploring deals, at least, how you feel, Pat?
I'm glad that my team is doing their due diligence on a player they're ready to move on from. That's really how I feel about it. Like, it's not, I mean, at this point, we fully expect Zach LaVine to start the season. I do. We fully expect Vooch to be here at the start of the season. You hope that you're able to build up some capital for Zach LaVine, some interest for Zach LaVine. But I'll be honest with you, like, everyone just keeps saying this relationship's dead, it's over, it's done, it is what it is, you'll figure it out. What if it can't be? Because it's not like he's going to get cheaper. His contract goes the other direction. What if it can't be? What if the Bulls can't move on from Zach LaVine?
Which is a likely scenario. Like, and that's the thing that everybody needs to get to. There is not just to start the season, there's a likely scenario in this that Zach LaVine is a Chicago Bull at the end of the season.
Yeah. I'm 100% agree. And that's what I'm saying. Like, what if this is Zach LaVine has to finish his contract out here? Zach LaVine's not going to stop playing. Do you change his role? Do you change, right? Like, how do you I guess satiate the skill set that he has and to keep his attention span here with the team? Because you can't let him lose interest, because he's a big enough piece on his team that you got to have him go out there and play. But on the flip side of that, right, like, if you're stuck with him, what do you do at a certain point? Like, does it become you kind of just have to move on from Billy Donovan? Does it become you just tell Zach LaVine to John Wallet and just, hey, go sit at home and make your money? Like, we just don't want you here.
That is something that I haven't thought about. Like, does it get to a point where it goes the other way, where eventually the Bulls look at it and say, you know what? Billy's an expiring contract as well at the end of this season. It could get. I'm not saying that that's a likely scenario right now. I think the Bulls are resigned to go ahead and move on from Zach LaVine at some point. I think the more likely scenario is that it could just get to a point where they're just like, all right, four unprotected second round picks, cool. Let's get that done. And I think that would be unfortunate. I'm not saying that that's necessarily the best case scenario either in that case. So
it's such a weird situation that they're in, man. Like there's so many things to me that if the Bulls are going to be a successful organization at some point in all of this, I think that the likely path or the quickest path to that is having a sit down with Zach LaVine and saying like, hey, just accept your fate here and let's go out here and try and win as much as possible.
Let's go win some basketball games.
I don't know another way that this gets resolved quickly for either side where both sides can be amicable.
I agree with you. And every day that goes by gets closer and closer to that. If we're being 100% honest, it just gets closer and closer to that. And I mean, that's the decision the front office ultimately has to make. And here's the thing: that the flip side of it. Let's switch this for a second. Do you think there's any world in which Vooch do they eventually move on from Vooch? Because right now I think that the Zach LaVine trade takes precedence because they want to see what they get back. That's probably why they haven't shot Vooch as hard. But do you think it gets to some point where they just say, all right, we gotta move on from Vooch. We'll figure out the Zach LaVine piece later.
I think moving Vooch isn't difficult.
Yeah, I agree. That's why. Yeah, I don't think moving Vooch is difficult at all. To be 100%,
I've said that the answer. I think moving Vooch is going to be one of the easiest things that the Bulls are going to be able to do, because what do we talk about every season? Like I think there is a part of this team that probably wants Vooch here while Zach is here.
Yes.
Because there's that, right? There's a relationship there. It's like, okay, we got a couple of veterans. Maybe Vooch can kind of keep things on track when things are ugly, different things like that. Like there's probably more to that than there is a want to get rid of Vooch, because if we're being 100% honest about Vooch, which is the easiest piece to move, what are you telling me? That a team wants somebody at the trade deadline who can rebound and be efficient in the paint? The Lakers are going to be calling 3 weeks into the season, guys. Like, what are we confused about here? The Warriors, maybe not the Warriors. He's a little slower now. But like teams are always looking for a Vooch.
Yeah.
Teams in the playoffs always want a Vooch. So like Vooch to me is
somebody wants a Vooch is wild.
Hey, sometimes you want that Voochie, man. Follow us on everything at Locked On Bulls. You can follow me on everything at Pat the Designer. Appreciate you guys for tuning in and showing love.
You guys can follow me at CEO Haize. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Locked On Bulls is free and available on every podcasting app and platform of your choice, as well as YouTube. For Pat the Designer, I'm Haize. This has been Locked On Bulls, and we out, y'all. Peace.
Was that crazy?
That was a little crazy, brother.
Is that wild? Oh, my bad.